Chapter 26. For the whole night, Lushu stayed up to practice his Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars. Humans needed sleep because of the limits of their bodies, and not sleeping would result in fatigue, and in extreme cases, even death. Yet to Lushu, practicing his abilities was a form of rest, and it would also replenish his energy, so he did not feel as tired. But Lushu felt that sleeping was also a form of pleasure, and he should not go to the extreme in order to train. Some people would sacrifice everything else in life to achieve immortality, but Lushu had a different set of ideals. To him, happiness was the most important, and being immortal without it was meaningless. He allocated his remaining 2,700 distress points into two parts. One part of 700 points were used to try his luck on the lottery wheel, only to get 7. Thank you for participating notifications. This made his blood boil. Having tasted the effects of the refresher fruit, Lushu was willing to gamble for it, but not to the extent of depleting his entire savings. And so he had 2,000 points left to buy 2 celestial fruits. Previously, Lushu only needed to eat 1 celestial fruit to light up 2 stars, but for the 3rd star, it took him an entire fruit. This time, he bought and ate 2 celestial fruits at one go, which lit up the 3rd and 4th stars on the map. It seemed like as Lushu progressed, more fruits and tougher training would be required to light up the subsequent stars, but he thought this was quite meaningful. As soon as the 4th star was lit up, a wave of celestial energy coursed through his body. His bones, muscles and vital passages felt like rocks lying on a beach being washed over and over again by the waves. What a good feeling. At this moment, Lushu felt a surge of strength accumulating within him, and it was twice as intense as before. His strength was about that of 4 grown men combined. Seeing his growth, he should be able to easily throw a rostrum single-handedly, and compared to Li Qi, a Class F metahuman, he was much stronger. Seems like I've gotten closer to Class E. Lushu looked out of the window, and the sun was already rising. Lu Xiaoyu had woken up early today and was having breakfast together with Lushu. After breakfast, she wanted to follow him to sell eggs. Let's go sell eggs together. When it is time for school, you can go directly and I'll bring the things back so that it's more convenient. Lushu was stunned for a moment. Although Lu Xiaoyu was normally quite mature, it was the first time she volunteered on her own accord to help him sell eggs. Lu Xiaoyu noticed Lushu's expression. Don't look at me like that, I just feel like I should do something for our family. Our family. These 2 words made Lushu emotional. Ever since he left the orphanage and rented this small house, he was yearning for the warmth of a family. Someone who grew up with a complete family would never understand how much an orphan yearned for one. Although this house had no parents, there was some feeling of family, some feeling of warmth. These feelings were present right at that very moment. Lu Xiaoyu hesitated and asked, if I am able to lift some burdens off your shoulders, can you buy me some roasted sweet potatoes? Lushu glanced at her and jokingly replied, no. From Lu Xiaoyu's distress, +30. Lushu knew that Lu Xiaoyu would not take his joke seriously, and that was why he dared to reject her so directly. And Lu Xiaoyu knew that Lushu was just kidding, so she did not take it to heart. This was their chemistry. Roasted sweet potatoes were Lu Xiaoyu's favorites. Even if she did not help him out, he would still buy them for her. Lushu had spent his childhood in an orphanage and was not fortunate enough to eat anything nice. Since he could give Lu Xiaoyu a better childhood than his, why not? Although he gave Lu Xiaoyu food and water, he did not feel like she owed him anything. The 2 of them only had each other to depend on, so they were not calculative at all. After selling the hard-boiled eggs for a while, Lu Xiaoyu suggested that she could handle the shop and urged Lushu to head to school. Lushu thought, since she has to learn to do so one day and the people on this street are mostly acquaintances, there's no reason not to feel safe, and left. It was the 2nd day of exams, and yesterday's math exam was postponed to this morning. After math was English, and in the afternoon was combined humanities, geography, history, and politics. Upon reaching school, everyone was discussing the blood drive yesterday. They must have gotten news online that the entire country's sophomores were all called up for this experience. Following the outburst of awakening incidents, this blood drive happened and everyone thought that there must be some relation. Could it be to test if we are eligible for training abilities? Didn't the Golden Foundation's website say that there is a way of training to become a metahuman? I think that's very possible. There could be a mass selection going on. As soon as Lushu stepped into the class, for some reason, everyone's voice became smaller as if they were avoiding him on purpose. But Lushu ignored it and sat down. He had the same opinion as the rest regarding the blood drive, but he was curious if it actually worked. Metahumans did not only include sophomores. Juniors, seniors, university students and adults also had the possibility to become metahumans. His deski Yi Lingling had a big mouth and the other classmates did not like to hang out with her. Besides gossips and idle chats, no one could stand her when discussing serious things. This tempted her to talk to Lushu. Teenage girls all had a certain trait, they only wanted to play and have fun. Lushu, did you go online yesterday? Yi Lingling asked. Lushu gave Yi Lingling an expressionless look and replied, freedom, democracy. From Yi Lingling's distress, plus 119. Yi Lingling was confused. She had asked if he went online, but why was he talking about government systems and politics? Then she realized. Lushu was not interested in talking to her about metahumans. Lushu only had one objective in mind. He only wanted to find an opportunity to interact with fellow metahumans and these non-metahumans. What was the point in talking to them? Chapter 27. The form teacher, Shi Qingyan, walked into class carrying a huge stack of paper under his arm. Upon sight of that thick stack, every student was immediately brought back to reality. If only the whole class would awaken to their powers by tomorrow, but as of now, they still had to go through the exams. Shi Qingyan stood atop the rostrum as he adjusted his glasses. I know that your mood these few days have been muddled. Perhaps you guys have just returned from your vacation and your heart isn't back yet. But what I want to remind you is that in a year and a half, you guys would be participating in the final graduating examination. If you get left behind now, it would be hard for you to catch up later. So compose yourself, understood? Alright, so for this period, we will be having the maths test. Shi Qingyan did not specify what the students should stay composed about, but it was understood by everyone what he was referring to. Lushu admired his form teacher Shi Qingyan for he was responsible for his job. Furthermore, Shi Qingyan was the only one with the courage out of the many teachers on the same floor yesterday. That rendered help to Class 7's form teacher when he was being beaten up. Yi Lingling whispered to Lushu, please allow me to copy your answers, peace will be blessed upon the Good Samaritan. The moment Yi Lingling spoke, the surrounding classmates started raising their eyebrows at Lushu as they displayed their intention to follow suit. By now, everyone had realized the usefulness of Lushu. At least he would be able to improve their grades for the test. Although she was used to relying on herself, Yi Lingling always felt that her greatest luck was being able to sit beside Lushu. This was because Lushu always allowed his test papers to be copied by the classmates surrounding him. Lushu, however, did not do it deliberately to better his relationships with his classmates. But as always, he left his test papers on the table after completion without any effort to conceal his answers. That was purely due to Lushu's easygoing nature. He did not feel that there was a need to conceal his test papers in such small tests, or was there a need to offend those interested in copying. But the situation was different now. Lushu took in a deep breath. Why did he look forward to the start of school? Was it not because of his group of adorable classmates? Halfway through the test, Lushu had already filled in all his answers. At that moment, Yi Lingling eyes sparkled and the surrounding students started making small silly movements. Lushu would usually leave his test papers flipped to the page with his answers. As they were ready to copy his answers, they saw that Lushu had flipped his test paper to the back. The surrounding classmates thought to themselves that it was no big deal and that they could copy the answers. On the back page of the test paper first. As they were about to copy the answers, Lushu flipped his test papers once again. With continuous flipping, Lushu flipped his test paper 20 times within a minute. Everyone kept their gaze on the flipping test paper, and to exaggerate things, they almost became cross-eyed because of this. The surrounding students were dumbfounded. Could his intentions of preventing them from copying be any more obvious? From Yi lingling distress, +70. From. Just from this wave, resentment from surrounding students had already given Lushu 300+ distress points. Looking at his income records, Lushu almost exclaimed in joy. Not long after the beginning of his paper flipping, Lushu caught the attention of Shi Qingyan. "Lushu, what are you doing? Keep it down." "Sure, teacher," Lushu replied. At that moment, the surrounding classmates were elated and felt thankful for Shi Qingyan's existence momentarily. Now Lushu would probably not be able to flip his test paper anymore? Sneakily, everyone placed their sights on Lushu's test paper again, only to find Lushu with his arms perched on his desk and his head cradled in his hands, seemingly deep in thought. "Thinking of your sister?" The perched arm blocked the test papers perfectly. "Doesn't hurt your conscience?" Not only does he not feel guilty, it actually felt great as Lushu laughed in his thoughts. With that wave, it generated an additional 200+ distress points for Lushu. Originally, Lushu allowed them to copy as he did not see a need to cover up his test paper since doing so would not benefit him in any way. But it was different now. "You guys schemed against me secretly yesterday, so why would I still allow my test paper to be copied?" Him doing all this now was for the sake of accumulating distress points. As he accumulated 500 distress points from just one exam, Lushu understood that in order to ascend from E-class, he would have to rely on these adorable classmates of his. At the same time, a classmate seated behind him was doubtful since he had always joyfully copied his Lushu answers. Could it be because that Lushu had learned of their conversation the previous day and was mad at them? From past experiences, the classmate believed that by talking to Lushu nicely, they would be able to copy the test answers from him. From behind, he stuffed a note towards Lushu. Lushu hesitated for a moment but received the paper and opened it. "Peace will bless the Good Samaritan. Multiple choice answers please." Lushu scribbled on the note and passed it back. The classmate was filled with delight as he would be able to get what he wanted now. But alas, when he opened the note, it wrote, "You wish." Instantly, the face of the classmate darkened. "What do you want me to wish for, you piece of shh? *T. From Lu Chang's distress, +170. Damn, Lushu was shocked to see such elevated anger level. Did Lu Chang want to start a fight with him? Lu Chang felt frustrated as it was not as if he did not know how to answer all of the questions, but he was just unsure of them. Having borderline and mediocre grades in class, he had no idea whether his answers were correct. He gritted his teeth and wrote on the slip of paper once again, "Abdabda?" As he waited for the slip of paper to come back, Lu Chang kept a lookout for Shi Qingyan. With hesitation and stealth, he waited for Shi Qingyan's attention to be elsewhere before opening up the slip of paper. Written on it were 3 words, "You wish again." From Lu Chang's distress, +311. Lu Chang was fuming when he saw the note. He finally gave up as he was certain that Lushu was mad because of the conversation with him yesterday. If not, why would he be denied the chance to copy the test answers when he had always been allowed to? That was being too petty. Everyone was only joking. There were such people in this world who would claim that you are unable to take a joke when they themselves went overboard with theirs. But what Lu Chang did not understand was that Lushu was not allowing them to copy not because he was mad, but because Lushu had already awakened and was a step ahead of them. He had to piss them off all for the sake of his awakened powers. Obtaining more than 1,000 distress points from this exam, Lushu knew that there were no problems at all but had a feeling that this event was far from over. He looked across to Yi Lingling and shifted his arm a little to review an answer from the test paper. Yi Lingling eyes lit up instantly and quickly scribbled the answer down on her own test paper. After she had copied the answer, the examination had ended at that moment and Shi Qingyan announced the collection of the paper. Yi Lingling could be seen with a black face as this was perhaps her worst exam yet in high school. Only focused on copying the answers, she did not focus on her test paper properly at all. The only positive thing was that the answer she copied for that one question would be correct, and that was her only consolation. Only when Yi Lingling passed up her test paper with a face full of unwillingness did Lushu finally shift his arms off the table. At that moment, Yi Lingling was in despair. The answer was actually B, and Lushu only allowed her to see half of the answer, which she assumed to be D. He must have done it on purpose. It was definitely done on purpose. That B was written so awkwardly large and it was obviously a scheme to trick her. From Yi Lingling's despair, plus 171. Chapter 28. Damn it, Yi Lingling thought uneasily, sitting on her seat. She decided never to speak a word to Lushu ever again. Lushu sent a message to his WeChat group gladly. His chat group comprised some random people, but the majority of them were his classmates. Sending a message with more than 7 lines will lead to some parts of the message being hidden, and his friends would have to select show more to see the entire content. Yi Lingling sat there with a look of helplessness. There wasn't much entertainment in school, so she looked at her phone and saw what Lushu sent. Why do I not have a cute deskie? While my deskie has one. Yi Lingling almost smashed her table. Have you had enough? Had enough? Teacher, I want a change of seat. Not sharing answers could be condoned by her, but what was with this message? Could they even be classmates still? How are you cute? Could you please explode? From Yi Lingling's distress, plus 536. Oh ho, Lushu's eyes gleamed, he had miraculously emerged victorious. Such a short lesson in the morning and he managed to amass more than 1,800 distress points, thanks so much deskie. We will be brothers from now on. However, the consequence was, the second exam of the morning was on English. And Lushu felt he didn't have many opportunities to gain more distress points. After all, he had already tried his best, and other people wouldn't be holding on to much hope for the exam. But Lushu had a miscalculation. During the exam, the classmates next to him thought about his actions and had a consistent negativity towards him. +1 +1 +1 +1. After just one morning, Lushu actually gained more than 2,000 distress points. He didn't know this was possible. In the afternoon, everyone went out for lunch. Lushu's message wasn't just visible to Yi Lingling, but everyone else as well. The classmates who were seated around him discussed amongst each other and Lushu thought that everyone was angry with him for what happened. During the exam, his antics disturbed everyone. Especially when everyone saw Lushu and Lu Cheng exchanging slips of papers, that was irrefutable evidence. It's just to say he couldn't awaken, everyone speaks the truth. He's always been weak and frail. In one semester, he has taken medical leave quite frequently, how could he awaken? Yeah, that's why he got angry and refused to let anyone copy his answers, right everyone? Yeah. And he still insulted Yi Lingling online. She almost cried while walking away just now. Hey, have you guys noticed? Lushu's complexion has been decent these few days. What's the use of that? He's gonna fall sick in a few days anyway. Lushu ate indifferently in the canteen. His lunch was prepared in the morning at home, stir-fried cabbage with rice. The food in the school canteen wasn't expensive, but whenever Lushu could save, he would do it. His classmates, to Lushu, didn't think logically. Since they insulted him, it was natural and understandable for him to retaliate. Moreover, Lushu wanted to gain distress points. So even if they didn't offend him, when the opportunity arises, he would offend them. While eating, Lushu saw the female student from the neighboring class who had awakened. She was sitting alone in the canteen, eating a meal quietly, neither speaking nor using her phone. This girl could really keep silent, unlike Li Qi from class 7, who used his strength carelessly and openly after awakening. No one was even sure where he was now. Lushu had to observe how the government treated Li Qi. If he disappeared for good, it was obvious that the government wanted to continue hiding all these unnatural occurrences. If Li Qi does come back, the generation of the metahumans was really inevitable. Lunchtime was only 50 minutes, and they had to return to class to self-study after lunch. They could also rest, but they just had to wait until the afternoon lesson at 2:30 p.m. Since they weren't under the supervision of the teachers, the students traded glances occasionally. Luocheng International School's sophomore 2 students were treated as such. Lushu suddenly noticed Yi Lingling, who was beside him, using her phone to chat. His vision was extremely good now, and with a glance, he could see a few familiar people in the chat, and the group name was Metahumans.
Oh.
These group of students created another group during lunch? Was this the group in which everyone discussed metahumans? Was there only a small number of people in that group? Or was he the only one not included? Lushu glanced again. The group had more than 50 people, showing that only a small number of people weren't added to the group. It seemed like his classmates were bent on ostracizing and excluding him. Lushu didn't take this to heart. After a year and a half, everyone would leave and take their separate paths. Lushu also found his classmates funny. Such a big group and there was not a single metahuman inside. What's the point of discussing metahumans in the group? Yi Lingling noticed Lushu glancing at her, and snorted coldly while placing her books on her left, blocking Lushu's vision. At this point, Lushu couldn't care less about Yi Lingling. He found out that the flame in his heart, through the training these few days, was slowly turning from white to green. What was this change? That flame, to Lushu, was getting hotter as if it was jumping around and burning. But this time Lushu really did not understand. He didn't know why the flame would change. He could now use, by his own will, the strength from the celestial map, but this flame was beyond his control. It was like it had yet to awaken from its deep slumber. In this situation, even if Lushu tried to think of a way to resolve this issue, it was really too difficult as he trained alone and knew nothing. Li Qi is back in school. The originally quiet afternoon was disturbed by a shout. My friend from class 7 told me, Li Qi just came back to class. The school allowed him back under supervision. Lushu sat at a corner while his classmates were absolutely shocked. This was the first metahuman to appear by their side. Originally, people thought that Li Qi would disappear mysteriously, but he eventually came back openly. Having beaten up a teacher, he only received a punishment of returning under supervision. Compared to other offenses, this was a very lenient punishment. His classmates were discussing agitatedly, coming to a conclusion that metahumans were not brought away by the government for investigation. Only Lushu was thinking otherwise. The government might be planning to stop hiding all these metahumans. Chapter 29. Once school ended, Lushu walked by class 7 casually as if he didn't know anything. He wanted to check out Li Qi and see if he was hurt in any way. He was, at first, afraid that others might find out he went to observe Li Qi. But before he reached class 7, he realized what a stupid worry that was. Waves of people were crowded outside class 7, there was no need to act unsuspicious whatsoever. Everyone surrounded Li Qi, asking tons of questions. Some asked how he awakened, then others asked how he felt, and some even asked what he planned to do after this. Some were also curious about whether his skills could improve further. It seemed like everyone wanted to be a metahuman. Lushu looked from afar. Li Qi, looking formidable and manly, said, I was agitated that day, and went to the park to drink alone. On the way home, I realized I awakened. Fret not, there must be a chance for you guys too. In future, whenever anyone needs help with anything, feel free to approach me. I'll tell you guys whatever I know. If anyone from another school bullies you guys, come to me. I'll make sure they won't be let off. Li Qi had always enjoyed the attention as a notorious adolescent of the school, arrogant as ever now. Teenagers at this age were easily influenced into taking the wrong path due to the attention placed on themselves. However, Lushu thought that Li Qi was not a bad person. He overheard in the canteen during lunch that Li Qi was never mean towards his schoolmates, and his brawls only happened with students of other schools. Someone asked Li Qi, "Nothing happened to you yesterday after the police brought you away, right?" Li Qi replied like it didn't matter, "Nope, they took me in for just one night and after that, I left." Lushu nodded his head and thought, Li Qi didn't even encounter the black coats. No, it shouldn't be put as such. It was probably because the other party didn't clarify their identity. After all, he was taken away by the black coats. This was completely different from the treatment to Liang Che. Was there a change in policy and attitude by the government? It seemed like it. This way, Lushu could feel much more at ease. At least the government didn't have such an extremist stance on the matter. However, the change should have been quite recent. If the government really conceded to the fact that metahumans existed, what would change in this world? It seemed like previous revolutions and strikes seemed incomparable to what was occurring now. After all, this was really something new to the entire planet of humans. Life just turned upside down so unknowingly and at such a short span of time. Math, languages, geography, history, etc. used to be the focus of every student, the most important thing in their lives. Now, it didn't seem to matter anymore. It was different now. It seemed like being a metahuman was another way out. Academically poor students now had hope. If they could somehow awaken, that could save their life from another point of view. While the better performing students would worry if their good performance still mattered. However, while they worried, they were also hoping that they might become metahumans. No one could predict what the world would be like. After all, no one ever experienced such a world. The term metahuman was now the most popular slang. It was really used thoroughly everywhere. At this point in time, a student suddenly exclaimed, "The city has announced it wants to form a Daoyuan class. It will gather all special students to learn together. The designated venue will be our school." Someone asked, "Where did you hear this from?" "My sister is a teacher in a secondary school and she just sent me a message," the male student replied. Daoyuan class, these words were interesting. Fire arrow class, red flag class. This stuff could be understandable to everyone, and it was just for learning, but Daoyuan class? The meaning behind this name was too obvious. But everyone was still rather unsure. As the change happened so quickly, sometimes when you know you have an answer, you might still not be too sure. F*******. Someone suddenly shouted. My science classmate from higher grade 1 told me that form teachers from our school had already begun telling their respective classes the names of those students who are admitted to Daoyuan class. In this case, Rock Chang Yen should be here anytime soon. Everyone was stunned. Why did this happen so quickly? Someone had just gotten the news, and in an instant, classes were already announcing names. Lushu was thinking. Why was the entire city's Daoyuan class situated in his school? Although this school was good, it wasn't the best. The school with the best resources should be Luo First Higher School, which was the #1 high school in Luocheng. Class 7 has announced the name list. On the name list, Li Qi. It was announced that usual cultural classes will still be in the current class, but other classes will be held in the Daoyuan class. Daoyuan class starts at 7 p.m. in the evening. Our school will cancel the night study sessions. Everyone was abuzz. Previously, that student mentioned that this Daoyuan class wanted to consolidate all the special students in the city. Everyone wasn't sure what the definition of special meant. Now they understood. Why was Li Qi special? He's a metahuman. Li Qi's grades were not good and were known as a bad boy in school. Why else would they stream him into the Daoyuan class? And excluding cultural classes, Daoyuan class only starts lessons once everyone else has been dismissed in the evening. What was going to be taught in Daoyuan classes seemed obvious. But there was another problem. Everyone knew that Li Qi was a metahuman, and it's no wonder that he was admitted into Daoyuan class. But what about the other people on the name list? Everyone was confused at this time, and they thought it could only be the blood test. There must be some method to sieve out if a student could awaken? Else why would everything seem as if it was planned from quite long ago? Then, a student said, "My cousin from primary school said one of his classmates received a notice to change schools and to admit into Daoyuan class next week." Lushu was suddenly shocked. He knew why the government wanted the Daoyuan class to be in his school. Currently, the age band for Daoyuan class was from primary school to sophomore 3. And his school, although not as good as other schools, was the only school which comprised primary, secondary, and higher levels of students and classes. This issue would probably affect the entire country. Chapter 30. In the past, Luocheng International School had erected a building specifically for foreign teachers. It was known as the music building, and every class had an allocated time to attend lessons by them. But due to the high costs of hiring those foreign teachers and how their lessons were not exactly very popular among the students, the program was eventually stopped and the building had been empty since. Lushu figured that the Daoyuan class was going to be held in this building. Regardless of how the world would view this in the future, every student in Luocheng International School was waiting in anticipation for their class representatives to announce the list for Daoyuan class. Everyone had guessed that the officials must have identified the potential metahumans through the blood test, and the list was about to be revealed. This time, it was not about grades, appearances, or family backgrounds. Anyone could be on this list. This was like putting everyone at the same starting line again. No matter which official or which company's CEO your dad was, God was going to be fair when it came to this, right? Everyone had that in their minds, thinking that they themselves had a chance to awaken, and this was also why the topic was so widespread. But Lushu knew that this world had never been fair, and it never will be. If not for the refresher fruit, his training would be much more sluggish, and so his objective should be to keep earning more distress points. Although he had the refresher fruit to help with training, there was another problem: his aptitude. It was needless to say that everyone was born with different aptitudes and potentials, just like intellect and talents. There was always a huge difference. Lushu thought that since the black coats had not approached him, then his blood must have no problem. Seemed like keeping all the celestial powers within the map was useful. But could he enter the Daoyuan class? And what exactly would they teach in that class? If his name was on the list, should he enter or not? Of course, he should. Logically speaking, everyone chosen should enter, because rejecting the class would mean you either had some mental issues or some other problems. For the interest of training, if Lushu could find a platform to learn about the government's knowledge on abilities, he could save a lot of time instead of trying to figure it out on his own. As of now, Lushu was training very inefficiently, having to try different things, and there was no one he could consult. Overall, it was very energy-consuming. And since those people could not detect his body's abnormality, he might as well join them. The idea of going with the flow and gaining more experience while training on his own had a nice ring to it. While considering all these, he was also studying, and his multitasking was going quite well. The people around him had started teasing each other. "You're definitely on the list." "No way, that would be you." Such hypocrites. Lushu shook his head. Seeing Lushu studying, Yi Lingling commented sarcastically, "What's the point in studying now? Times have changed. No matter what you do, some people are bound to be failures." Lushu rolled his eyes. He did not agree, but thought, in any time or generation, there would always be people working to build the foundation of the society, right? You cannot possibly ask the metahumans to go build underground sewers. She must be really confident. And what is with that look of hers? Does she really think she will awaken? At this moment, Shi Qingyan, holding on to some papers, walked in. Following beside him was a young man wearing a pair of sunglasses, and he had quite a gentle smile. The others might not be aware, but Lushu recognized him. He was one of the two black coats who was hunting Liang Che down on that snowy night of New Year's. But he was finally here, and as he stood there quietly, Lushu could feel the immense strength and power this guy possessed. Shi Qingyan looked at the students. The city had decided to set up a Daoyuan class in our school, and these unique students will go through a series of lessons to cultivate their talents. And this person next to me will be the teacher in charge of the Daoyuan class. The students looked at one another in awe. If that man was the Daoyuan class in charge, then did that mean that he was a metahuman? Shi Qingyan proceeded to take out the papers. I will be reading out the list now. Those names that have been called, please wait outside the staff room as your teacher in charge have something to speak to you about. From tomorrow onwards, you will be reporting to the Daoyuan class at 7 p.m. but for normal classes, you will still need to attend as per your current class. The students' eyes all lit up and became alert to what was being said. This was such a critical moment for them. Luli, Rock Changyan read out the names one by one, waiting for the student to leave before reading out the next name. The first name read was Sophomore Class 3's class representative. Li Qingyu. Yuan Ling Qi. Every time a name was called, that person would blush with excitement. How exciting! Even when walking out of the classroom, they would walk upright and proud, as if they were afraid to embarrass the reputation of metahumans. As the names were being read, the remaining students whose names were not called started to be worried. Who would be next? Someone had already asked the classes next door, and it seemed like every class had about 4 to 5 and the most were 6, while some classes had only 3. So how many did this class have? So far 3 names had been called, and these people were those others felt were most likely to awaken. They all had a common trait, and that was their dominant disposition. Could it be in their genes? Previously everyone had thought that God was fair, but now they had realized God was unfair after all. These people already had a strong presence, and now it was still the same. Seeing the trend, some of the students had started to lose hope. But it was comforting that at least they were still part of the majority. It was not the case that only they were not chosen. Look at Lushu, his grades were so good, but he was also not chosen. The thought of this was quite comforting, and this was human's nature at its purest. Shi Qingyan read the last name, Lushu. The class suddenly quietened down, as though it was the end of the world. Lushu? Someone voiced out his doubts. Yes, Lushu. Shi Qingyan nodded. Okay, I'm done. The rest of you can continue with your work. Having finished reading the list, Shi Qingyan noticed Lushu, who was still in his seat. Lushu? At the moment, new updates were appearing inside his records, plus 411, plus 419, plus 577, plus 177, plus 99. You guys are too generous.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on the show.